Two folks, welcome back to So Bad It's Good, presented by Betches Media. I'm really excited to talk to our next guest. I guess I have not talked to her since Scandival, the heat of Scandival, because I was on her podcast called The Curious Life back in the heat of Scandival, and she's all the way over in Australia. And her podcast, I mean, it's not fully Bravo and pop culture, even though there's elements of that, but she's all about like helping people and taking examinations of your own life. She has a second book that just came out this year called Plot Twist, and it's a personal guide to surviving life's unexpected curveballs. We should have actually sent a copy of this to Tom Sandoval. That probably would have been good. So we'll talk Bravo and some pop culture and what Plot Twist is all about, because I think as we wind down the year, it's really important to take stock of the year and potentially think of what this next year can be. And I'm just horrible at all of those things. So this couldn't have happened at a better time, because I've been sitting here all day bumming out, feeling overwhelmed. And maybe our guests can help make heads or tails of that, not to put too much pressure on her. But folks, ladies and gentlemen, the one and the only Jana Firestone, welcome back to welcome to the show. I was on your show, but welcome to this show.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm so thrilled to be here. I loved our chat when I desperately needed that Vanderpump insight, but also I'm a huge follower of your show, massive fan.
How did you even find this is how small brained I am. And I'm like, Australia, you guys get these shows over in Australia? Like you get Bravo over in Australia?
Yeah. Do you know what? I am such an OG Bravo fan that before streaming even existed, I used to get some woman in America who I found on eBay to burn me CDs of Real Housewives of OC and New York when that's all that was on. And I was watching it on CD.
You were buying copies, like some lady was ripping it off the TV, yep. And then you were buying them on eBay. And wow,
that is commitment. How dedicated. Yeah. So I'm a reality junkie as far back as they come.
That's amazing. No, in your personal life, though, you have a degree in psychology. You have a master's in counseling. You spent 17 years working with grief and trauma with like young people and their families, it says. I mean, that's some really intense work. And then you choose to have like your escapism is Bravo, which is maybe just as intense, if not more intense sometimes. Why do you think Bravo is your escape when you already deal with such intense issues, with people?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that, working with such heavy content all day. I used to watch crime shows and that sort of thing back in the day, like 20 years ago. And then I was working at the coroner's court and I was working with victims of crime, and it was all just really too close to home. So for me, I just needed to completely switch off and be taken into this fantasy land behind the gates in Orange County and, watch Vicky Gunvalson scream about a family van. Like that couldn't be more removed from the darkness and the heaviness of the work that I was actually doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I and there is something that it almost allows us to not disassociate, but also see the humor in insanity. Like there is something that we can watch this season of Salt Lake City, which I think takes place on an alien island. And you're just like, this is insane. This is crazy that Lisa Barlow actually exists as a real human being. And then you're like, well, if they can get through Reality Von Tease, maybe I can get through this next year.
100%. And look, there is a little part of me as well that can't help unpacking the human behavior behind it. I mean, you should see the text threads that I have with my other fellow Bravo fans. I mean, all professionalism goes out the door. I'm absolutely judgmental. I absolutely am too invested, and I have so many thoughts, but I have to kind of get behind the machinations of it all and try and understand, like, why are these people saying these things? Or I wish I could be that ballsy in a social situation and really say what I'm thinking, but that'll never be me. So I'm kind of living through them,
No, there is that thing, especially there's all different types of like characters and archetypes in these shows. And one of the ones, like you said, of like the ballsy character or the Lisa Barlows or trying to think who that would be. I mean, I guess Dorit, you could say this season all of a sudden has become this massive truth teller for her own life, supposedly. And you're just like, I don't know if I could ever do that. And I don't know if I necessarily take, like, I've got to be Lisa Barlow screaming at the, like, tell the truth. We got to tell the truth. But it is, I don't know. It is wild that these are the people that I go to. And I wonder, if anything, how much that has helped my overall psychological makeup. Has it helped it, or has it hurt it? Have you ever done any studies on what this does to our brains?
Only, lived experience, personal anecdote, no clinical trials as yet, but watch this space. But I just think, like, there's so many good things that come from it, but it definitely has harmed my mental health before. I've had to take a break, like Beverly Hills, I had to actually step away from after after the puppy gate and then the Fox 5, whatever they were
Fox
called.
Force 5.
I just had to step away. Erica, was driving me insane. Lisa Rinna was driving me insane. It just became too ugly, and I just really had to step away. Jersey, I had to step away from. I did not watch last season. I kept up with it all online, but even that was too much for my blood pressure. I could just feel it rising.
Because it's so real, and there's really nobody seems to want to actually fix anything. And I think what we always say is that these shows at their best is about conflict and resolution. And if you just have all conflict and no resolution, it is like the biggest, you're like edging yourself, where you're like, oh, it's going to be fixed. It's going to be fixed. And then you realize it's never going to be fixed between Teresa and her brother and Melissa. I've given up all hope.
Same, completely given up. And, I was never a tree stump by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm probably should be scared saying that out loud. But I just could not understand how people were blindly supporting her when there was just nothing rational about anything she ever did or said. And it was like I could feel the distress of anyone trying to have an argument with her or have a conversation. There was just no way to get through to her, even on the most simple of levels. And I was going insane, and I had to just step away.
You're speaking a very logical way of going about things, and that's what's interesting if you break down the Bravo fandom. And I guess this is breaking down humanity a little bit as well, because I think about this all the time, is that how we watch these shows, we watch them in a bunch of different ways, and sometimes they commingle. I watch them, I guess primarily I watch them and I look for the funniest things in them first, or like the things that really just kind of pique my interest, or like these insane little details. And then to me, you have these kind of sometimes beautiful stories, or like triumphs, or watching people get over some kind of tragedy, which I think, Plot Twist, your book, is talking about getting through these life's unexpected curveballs that they're thrown at people. So that's kind of interesting to see. But then it's interesting that the other Bravo audiences, sometimes they watch it just like a sports team, and Teresa's going to be their favorite player no matter what happens. So they're going to blindly follow Teresa. If Teresa all of a sudden robbed a bank, well, that's a bad example. She did go to, if Teresa did another crime, people would just be like, she deserved it. She deserved that money. She did, she's just perfect. And I think that's the interesting thing that frustrates me, even about Erica Jane in the past, or I think Brandi Glanville I talked about on today's show. There's never any kind of personal responsibility for most people on Bravo. They never really say, listen, I'm in a really dark place. I don't know why I made the decisions I made. All I can say is that I'm really sorry now. And it's very rare we get that. But is that the same you feel like in real life as well?
Absolutely. There are, a lot of people are really egocentric, and that just means they cannot see beyond themselves. And you would think that means they could be reflective and look at themselves in a critical or a reflective way, but there's so many people in this world that absolutely cannot do that. And that's kind of what makes it all so interesting. If everyone was rational and self-reflective and looking to evolve and grow,
we'd have no show.
What kind of kumbaya world would we be in? Exactly. So, we kind of need all of these different characters in real life and on the shows to make life spicy and to make the shows interesting, But it is really, really, really hard not to get invested and have a physiological response to some of this stuff, at least for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean it's weird because I watch these things as my stories or my shows, and I think of them as characters, and then
Mm,
sometimes it'll really mess my head up if I meet them in real life or I talk to them in person, and you kind of it's like that whole image. It doesn't necessarily get shattered, but it kind of dampens things because you're like, oh, that's a real person, and I
yeah,
always try to treat most people with respect, and then it really
yeah.
messes me up when I have to then really go hard. Like, what do you think about Heather Gay this season on Salt Lake City? How do you feel about Heather Gay's journey from season 1 of Salt Lake to now?
Um, if I'm perfectly honest, I just think the fame has gotten to her and she's gotten a little bit too big for her boots. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? She kind of like had that big moment. I know you've talked about this on other shows as well, that she had her big receipts timeline moment. And I think she's riding that high.
You think?
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, just a little. But I have to say, there's actually nobody on Salt Lake that's rubbing me the wrong way, the way that some of the other, like a Tamra, has done, in recent times. And that's really interesting to me, that what you were just saying before about meeting these people in real life who you're potentially a little bit critical of in the show. I have to be honest, I could not listen to your Tamra interview because I was
Oh.
still so in my body about her. I'm
Oh,
like,
it was
Ryan,
oh, it was so
no.
see, and it's so funny because that's a great example of listen, if I get offered a Tamara interview, I'm going to take a
Of
Tamara interview
course.
because I thought, listen, what a challenge for me. Because also, you got the Bravo people there. So there's only so much information you can actually get out. But Tamara
Yeah.
was willing to play ball a little bit. And I was like, that speaks to how good Tamara is at, I can give her flowers for like how good she is of that. But
Yeah.
I tried to, in subtle ways, go, don't you see this? Or this is how
Mm,
I see this. And
yeah.
she graciously, and I don't want to blow smoke up her ass, but she graciously allowed that kind of line of questioning. I
Mm,
will say it is so funny because I went away with that season. What I predicted happened is that she had to do an apology to Shannon at the reunion, and Shannon
mhm.
so dumbly just like took it,
Oh,
and I was just like, you just
seriously.
never. It seems like you're never going to learn, Shannon.
Yeah.
But I was with you, and I was furious with Tamara during the season. And then you kind of like think about the 360 angle of this is a person out there trying to make things happen. She thinks of
Yeah.
herself as like, making plays and doing
Yeah.
doing the dirty work. And my question was, is Tamara like that in real life? Or is she just like that like I start to think about
Yeah.
it like way like Inception. Like how deep does it go with Tamara? Like is she somebody that you can actually be friends with? But it also blows the cover of the whole show is that these ladies
Yeah.
truly aren't they're not like the lifelong friends that we go to in our times of
Yeah.
need potentially.
Well, I think that would be really interesting to find out whether Tamara does have long-term friendships with people outside the show. I think that would be very telling.
Tamara, do you have a soul? Do you have a soul, Tamara? A question.
Yeah. Yeah,
This is an audience
exactly.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I think, I think you're so right. Like we want to understand everything and get behind it all, but it does ruin the show if we find out if she's like, absolutely it is all for the show and I have got lifelong friends who I'm very loyal to and I completely switch off when it's cameras up off and but I'm not sure. I feel like it's so innate with her. It comes out so easily even if it is intentional and all of those things. I feel like you got to have a bit of
Oh,
that
she loves it. Like
personality.
it's like we all have that thing. Like people call it like your special sauce, and Tamara's special
Yes.
sauce is just like getting into people's business
Yeah.
and really just being that kind of barnacle that will like just
Yeah.
keep pushing somebody's hurt spot. Like she's
Yeah.
just somebody that pushes on that bruise and just makes
Yeah.
it worse and worse and worse. And we've
Yeah.
seen her do that. And by the way, she's kind of rewarded for it. So it's kind of like Brandy Glanville in a way where she might get mixed signals of, well, I thought Bravo wanted me to be a complete drunk and
Yeah.
do crazy things.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was just looking at an interview, I think it was with Bryce Sanders just
Bryce
before I came
Sanders with
online.
Brandy Glanville today. What did you think
Yeah.
about that?
I mean, it's tragic that she, feels this way and is looking this way. I mean, clearly there's incredible disfigurement going on, and that would be so distressing for someone who placed so much value on the way they looked for the longest time. Like
Well, I mean,
most of us
but
do,
also
but
speaking of your experience as a woman, don't all women are so pressured into, I mean, I even have this a little bit of like vanity about myself and but like women
Yeah.
especially, they're so rewarded for their looks, or just like even
Yeah.
when you're a little girl or something, like, oh, there's
Yeah.
my pretty little girl or this and that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you see something with Brandy that used sex not as a weapon, but was able to use it and joke with it. And as that
Yeah.
starts to fade, you can't imagine the litany of problems that would cause in your mind.
Absolutely. And I think there's obviously a really deep insecurity in her. And I don't know how far back it stems, but you look at what happened with her marriage. And so, that was so
Shout out
public.
Sheena.
Yeah, that's right. The woman that started all the
I mean,
shows.
truly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But she, was a big part of the demise of Brandy's family, and probably so much of that came from that time. And so there's a part of me that feels sad for her, and I wish things could be better. But I've also watched her behave like, sorry, in a way that could be taken as sexual assault with people. She's been all over people when she's drunk and thinking
Yeah.
it's fun and it's all for the show. But
even in
yeah,
that interview with Bryce, Bryce says, oh, like, because she posted this picture on Twitter or X, with like the
yeah,
face. And she was like, well, I was drinking. And he was like, oh, yeah, drinking and tweeting, which is the title of her book. And
mm,
that's the thing, too. It's like, of course you were drinking. Like,
yeah,
we sometimes don't recognize the obvious, like, hey, what do you think it could be? Do you think the drinking at this
yeah,
point, it's like Shannon Bedore or Karen
yeah,
Huger from Potomac? Like, do you
yeah.
think once like authorities have become involved, or like a lot of these bad things, the one common thread is alcohol potentially? Like, I don't
Exactly.
want to, I mean, I don't know if that's okay to say, but it just feels like that's the one thing she hasn't fully explored, of just getting sober.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it has to be contributing. Certainly, we know what alcohol does to the brain and to our mental health. And by the way, I am definitely a drinker, so I'm not here advocating, that
Oh yeah,
we
no,
all should stop
me as
drinking.
well. I mean, I
Yeah.
drink way less than I used to, but
Same. Yeah.
definitely one of those things that it doesn't contribute like the amazing thing to my life on a daily basis. And there's
No.
just too much to do. It screws me up.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like that's the piece that's missing. And if I think about her life just as an observer, there must be a lot of loneliness and a lot of sadness and a
Yeah,
lot of feelings of
that's it.
rejection and isolation. She was off the show. She finally had a ticket back in and it's fallen over. There's all of this public commentary about her that is largely negative. No one believes that there's any kind of parasite or medical issue. Everyone that are in the comment section that I'm, stalking are saying things like it's, potentially other medical things that are
Yeah.
elective. So, this is not somebody who's living a well-adjusted and healthy life anyway. So there would be
No,
things that you could do.
her story just takes me down in the dumps. Like, cause
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't think I'm not an empath, but I feel very like, I'll look at the story and I read it and I'll see it over the last year. And you kind of said it perfectly though. It's like, here's somebody that probably was deeply insecure to begin with. Obviously, her husband did what he did, so that doesn't, add up to anything great as well. She goes on Beverly Hills. She gets really, she's celebrated, right? She has this
Mhm.
really strong relationship with Lisa Vanderpump. Lisa Vanderpump eventually kicks her to the curb. That hurts her. She eventually makes her way off of Bravo, and then only to come back for like guest spots on Beverly Hills, where she'll throw out crazy information to kind of poke the bear. She does a couple girls trip, and it eventually leads up to the girls trip that we'll never see in Morocco, that
Yeah.
she, Caroline Manzo has filed a suit against her saying that she tried to sexually, come
Yeah.
at Caroline. And you just see all of this stuff. And it's like one of those things you just imagine her at home going, oh my God, at one point I had it all and I thought I was part of the cool kids. And now
Yeah.
I feel just like, I don't know. I always just feel like she feels so alone.
Yeah, totally. That is absolutely the vibe I get from her too. And I think it's sad, but at the same time, there is so much she could be doing to help herself, and probably
But isn't that
staying
the
off.
case with all of us though?
Yes,
Like there's so
true.
much I could be like, I should
Very true.
have went and walked today. I should have went and walked today. I knew I should have done it because it makes
Yeah,
me feel good, but I didn't want to walk. I wanted to watch Southern
yeah,
Charm and I should
yeah,
have done that, but I didn't. And
yeah,
just to her, it just, my thing is, as we get older too, what scares me is that, um, these problems just keep accumulating. Like it just,
Yeah.
we're putting it in this one basket, and the basket's getting overfilled, and we manage in life to do these small things. But
Yeah.
like overall, it just feels like this never ending list of things that we'll never be able to do or accomplish. By the way, hey, happy holidays, you guys. Merry Christmas.
Lovely, happy vibes for this December month. Beautiful, hopeful, positive. Yeah.
You know,
But
I mean, like, I mean, that's just that's what I feel like, is that it just feels like overwhelming for her, and I can relate to that. I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it'll be really interesting to see where this goes. I mean, she's had an attempt at several lawsuits with Bravo. I think something got dismissed recently, didn't it?
Something got just, well, she signed up with the Reality Reckoning lawyers, Bethany Frankel's lawyers, the Garagos and the other guy, and they dropped her. They dropped her, even though they kind of, I think, wooed her to be with them. So that must have been another like mind scramble for Brandy, right?
Yeah.
But that's it. I just feel like you're going against the wrong people. And I'm not like standing up for corporations, even though I do have a loyalty to Bravo. It just feels like, then it just looks like I just need money. I just need money.
Yeah. Well, what's your take then of like the Leah McSweeney, who's claiming that all of her drinking is Bravo's fault?
Well, I mean, isn't that what we were talking about personal responsibility? Like, you know, aren't we always taught, like, you got to take a long, hard look in the mirror and may have some hard conversations with yourself. And by the way, like, forgive yourself, which I think you talk about in your book, is being able to forgive yourself for certain things, but also don't lash out at other people saying it's because of you that I drank this much. Like, of course, these shows, of course, you probably want to drink every night when you're on these shows. Like, I would want to drink if I was on Vanderpump Rules.
Totally.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it seems a little ridiculous on the out. Like, really, you come off as a strong-willed person, but you are saying that you are essentially weak-willed, because all it did to lure you back to drinking was $250,000 to get back on Ultimate Girls Trip. And it just seems like your feelings were hurt more than like doing deep psychological damage. But at the same time, being on reality shows at all, I would imagine, has deep psychological after effects for everybody.
And that's right. And if this was 15 years ago, even, 20 years ago, we would have a different take on those people that might have been naive to what reality TV is. But someone like Leah, she came into a show that was well and truly a well-oiled machine. Everyone has seen the quote-unquote exploitation of reality people in the last decade at least. We know there's going to be drinking and hijinks and chaotic life intrusions and all of the things that you accept when you sign up for one of these shows. So you can't claim to be going into these shows blindly anymore and then being surprised when it hasn't been all peachy.
Exactly. Well, I mean, and the same I would say for so many instances, but this season on Salt Lake, we've been introduced to Bronwyn, a newbie, and a lot of the fandom is really up in arms about her husband Todd. Just saying, like, listen, this doesn't seem like a good situation potentially. What's your take on that relationship? And she's a first season person, and we're blown, like, we seem to love her just like we loved Leah on the first season, like we loved Heather Gay on the first season. I'm curious what Bron will be like next season, but how do you view their relationship?
It's really interesting. When I first watched, when they were away on their little vacation, hosted by Bronwyn and Todd, I saw everything that everyone's been seeing. It seemed like a fatherly relationship. Honestly, I feel like that's how my dad would speak to me. If I dragged him along to a cast dinner, he would be grumpy.
Stop
like, what is
now.
this? Yes. What is this? Can you tell them to leave or I'm going to leave? Because he would not have a clue. He's not watched 5 minutes of reality television.
He's not there to play games.
Yeah, and he's from a different generation. And, talking about Todd, he's an executive at the highest level, or at least he has been.
Wouldn't Todd do the research? Like Leah should have done the research of like, if Todd's a businessman, wouldn't he have looked into what his wife was getting herself involved in? And so then now I'm getting this stupid conspiracy brain where I'm like, is this like a setup? Is he like just kind of saying these things because he know it's good for TV? But then I'm like, no, why would he do that? Because that makes him look overall bad anyways.
Yeah, it looks authentic to me. And I think that is really him. And I'm not sure exactly what I think yet. I think we'll watch this space. I think the relationship, they talk about people coming on these shows with tricky relationships to either like end the relationship and get their own thing going, or to get a mirror to try and change things and improve the relationship, or at least that sort of seems to be the path that we've seen all these years. So I don't know. As a therapist, I look at micro expressions on a face, right? So I'm kind of clocking things that I think people are reacting to and having feelings about that might not necessarily be the overt thing that they're expressing. And I do worry about some of the things I see with her. I see these tiny little flinches and withdrawals, and I see her closing in a big way, in an obvious way, but also that there seems to be some underlying stuff there in the relationship. And I don't know if it's the age and the 10 years ago when they got together and she was so much younger and he was so much more senior as a professional and a man of the world and all of those things. And that dynamic hasn't really evolved, but it feels like she's wanting to evolve. I mean, she's here on the show and she's guns blazing.
She's ready.
She is ready. So she's ready to fly. And then I'm not sure that the relationship as it stands is going to work. So something's going to change.
You don't want a partner that's going to clip your wings at some of these key moments in your life. And so I think that will be an interesting decision, even though I think I can tell they love each other. I think it's very different than Erica Jane and Tom Girardi.
Yes.
Like I think it's very different. In fact, Todd seems to be with her everywhere. Like if you even look at their like outside life on social media, it seems like they're all like Tom Girardi and Erica were not hanging out like 24/7 at all. So it does seem like they have a very real relationship. It's just a different relationship than a lot of us have knowledge of potentially.
Yeah. And that's right. We'll never fully know what goes on behind closed doors. I do think he handled himself at the bat mitzvah better. I thought he was really kind of chivalrous the way he was offering Angie a drink. And
would you like a drink, Angie? Would you like Todd's better than you. Todd's better than you, Bronwyn. Todd is your husband's the better half.
I like you, Todd. But yeah, I felt like he was, intervening in a more supportive way. He didn't just say, "Come with me now, walk away, Bronwyn." I think he actually was quite he got a few points for me in that situation. But, we've seen the preview of some conversation on the boat where she's like, well, almost like, you want
to know what's really going on with my marriage? Yes. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So and maybe the answer to that is it's wonderful and I've never felt more loved and supported, who knows? But yeah, I think this is a really interesting dynamic. I think they're a great addition. I do think Bronwyn, I loved her all up until maybe the last episode, and she got a little bit unhinged.
She got a little murky in the switching over back and forth, and then like throwing like Angie under the bus and throwing, but like there was a little murkiness, and I almost thought she was like trying to impress Lisa and Meredith at a certain point. And Heather Gay falls into that trap of trying to impress Lisa as well. And then we got the slut shaming from like Angie all of a sudden went like buck wild and went crazy. And Lisa Barlow, by the way, was like laughing the entire time. She was like, ha, but seriously, that's bad, Ange. But like laughing. She was like loving all of this. Yeah. And I thought like, Angie, like what is your take on Angie? Like Angie doesn't have any micro expressions. She just has macro expressions.
Yes, absolutely. And she's really, really grown on me, Angie. I think she's quick-witted. I think she's funny. I thought that was outrageous. And just to be clear, Ryan, it was hair shaming, not slut shaming. But
well, it started with slut shaming because it was the 10, like you were with 10 guys and that kind of hair. that high
Yes.
body count hair, that's the
Yes.
hair of a slut. That's what
Yes.
that's the hair of a
Yes.
slut. That's
I
what
take it back. You're right. You're right.
Yes.
You're right. But I do think, okay, that was bad, but it was kind of Housewives great. I thought she was
Oh my God.
hilarious.
It
What a
was
scene.
amazing. Well, see, that's what we're
Yeah.
talking about, viewing these in different ways. As a
Yeah.
Housewives, like, bizarre episode, it was amazing. We'll talk
Yeah.
about that for years to come. But like,
Yeah.
actually, as a real life scenario, you're like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
your hair doesn't mean you're like if you look at
Yeah.
the the actuality of that conversation, if that happened to you in real life, you'd be like, what? Like, I just didn't comb my hair today. It just looks bigger.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I sleep with a bunch of people.
Yes, exactly. But I think you've said this before in other episodes where it's like you said Salt Lake is like taking place on some alien island somewhere else. Completely.
This is all AI. There's no way this is real. Like, I've met a couple of these people, so I do know they exist. But other than that, scripted shows aren't this good. Like, you couldn't write this, but at the same time, you feel like this. But it's just the weirdest feeling. And I only get that from Salt Lake, because then if you go to Beverly Hills this season, it just feels like deep trauma.
Yeah.
And like, there's not tons like funny about it. Like in terms of like the back and forth dialogue, like even Dorit and Kyle, it just seems like, you're a bitch, Kyle. Like, I hate you. And it's so much funnier on Salt Lake.
Well, Kathy's meant to be the comic relief, and that's kind of the extent of it.
I'm going to Kathy's house tonight.
Stop it!
I'm going to her holiday party. After I get off with you, I got to shower and put on a suit, and I'm going to Kathy. Let me know if you want me to take anything of hers for you.
Oh my God, take it all, Ryan.
Yeah, it's actually at her estate.
Wow.
And I don't even know what I'm going to do. And I think I have a feeling there's going to be a bunch of housewives there.
Yeah, definitely
and I feel like I wish it was like Sutton's Surrealist Ball where I'd wear a mask or something, because I'm scared of like, I don't want to, I just made a meme about Kyle last week, and I made a meme about like, what if Morgan Wade and Kyle are there? What if Morgan Wade's with Kyle?
Well, we don't talk about Morgan, just like the Morgan letters.
Morgan. I thought they were. Wait, I thought they weren't together anymore. And then did you see those photos yesterday of them out to lunch with Lisa Rinna of all people?
Yes, I did.
I would never let my girlfriend around Lisa Rinna. Never.
No way. No way. But then again, I mean, the cynic in me is going, okay, like, is this intentional? What's the likelihood? She lives in Encino. Even I know that Kyle is not from Beverly Hills anymore. Why is she in Bel Air or Beverly Hills randomly bumping into Lisa Rinna with the photographer there?
Yeah, you don't randomly bump into Lisa Rinna. There's just, and then I don't know. It really scared me. And I was like, what is going on? And that's the thing is, Bravo fans, I think that's what's changed over these last 18 years or however long it's been, is that we are just so much more conspiratorial now. And when I talked to you during Scandival, one of the thoughts was this all fake? Was Scandival all fake? Was this all? And then now it's like, guys, it wasn't fake. See, if this was all plot, they would be lasting 3 more seasons because everybody thought it was fake to keep the show going. Well, guess what? It's not. The show's not going anymore. It's done. What did you think of that, by the way, of Vanderpump stopping with the OGs?
Okay, I have to be honest.
Please.
I was really relieved. I really was. And again, I say this as a hardcore OG fan, but they ran it into the ground. And I'm sorry. I think you did an excellent job holding Lala accountable on Jeff Lewis.
Dude, see, that stuff keeps me up at night because people don't understand. Like, I truly am sensitive. So I go hard on these shows, but it's like, I really feel this way. But at the same time, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
No, of course.
And at the same time, like, it's what we were talking about accountability. It just seems like, why can't you, what don't we know that is preventing you from accepting any sort of accountability for this? That's the thing that I'm just, it keeps me up at night.
Yeah. And you know what keeps me up at night? The fact that so many, there's so many of these people who are not able to be reflective and seem to grow from it. They also seem to have no awareness that 99% of their hot takes and strong thoughts and opinions on things are on video and audio recordings that live forever.
Shout out Jax Taylor. This is the first time I've ever heard I was a narcissist. I'm like, dude, we have 10 seasons of people literally saying you're a narcissist. Like, were you just not listening? Like, you can go back and watch with me.
Exactly. And you just can't have it both ways. Like Lala made a whole horrific tanking season about Ariana not coming to play and making a show because this is how she feeds her children. Did you know she's a mother, Ryan?
You better respect my paycheck.
That's right. And then she's now doing Sheena's podcast or whatever it was, saying, and I wasn't going to come back. I knew it wasn't going to come back. I didn't need that.
You're talking about the shenanigans episode. I was,
yes.
Maritza sent that to me. I was pulling my hair out because you were like, oh, they came to you and said, come back. And you're like, I'm done after season 10 because it's going to get real messy. Like, you're not the prognostic. Like, by the way, of course it's going to get messy. That's what the shows are, is messy. Yep. But I love that she it's like she puts herself above the show. And that's not my favorite type of character on these shows. No. Like, I don't like Bethany Frankel was amazing, but when she started putting herself way above everybody else, that is not fun for me to watch, because you have somebody that thinks they're the cat's pajamas and they've not necessarily earned it. And, they're wildly popular. Like, I think Lala is a great character. I just will always... But basically, you're saying you were relieved. They ran it into the ground.
I was relieved. I really actually don't want to hear from any of them. Ariana, I'm a huge supporter. I have no choice. But I would love them. I'm happy to cheer on Ariana's projects. I think she's doing something completely different. So this does not apply to her. But I actually could take a long break from all of that cast for at least a year. I think they should be put into a vacuum. We don't have to hear or see them at all, and get some distance from it.
I'm with you.
So that I can go back and go like, that was the best show ever. I loved that show. But now I just feel like, who are these dickheads? This is like such crap. Turn it off.
You know what it is? Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it so much in the last couple of weeks, and I think, people were, so many people checked in on me. But at the end of the day, I was like you, where I was like, it was like a great exhale of like, okay, good, like, good. We can get, and by the way, I didn't hate last season as much as everybody else did. And I thought, I still was like, oh, I could make a good show out of another season. I know there's ways, but at the same time, also people with like the Ariana stuff, I think, and I'm not speaking for her, but I think this has got to be the biggest relief ever, because she's actually done what they all wanted to do, is start a career outside of reality TV. Like, she can host Love Island and be a part of that reality TV. But you know how much better your life is that she does not have to share what her relationship with Dan actually is. Like, that they'll probably have a stronger relationship for it, because she's seen what it does. And like, I think there's a world like Sheena and Lala, I think they're built for reality. They want to keep doing reality. Lala, I don't know, is built as much as Sheena, but like Ariana, I think it's like, girl, just go, just run. Don't look back.
Run.
Just keep going, girl. You're doing it. You're doing great. And people will always be like, I'm tired of the Ariana stuff. That's great. You don't have to, like, she's not looking to come back to reality. She's got what she wanted. Like, she has something horrible happen. And for once, karma like did the right thing and gave the right person some great opportunities, which I thought she did great at. And now she's proving it on her own. But the rest of them, like, where does Sandoval go from here?
Seriously, he just continues with karaoke. He will always
he's doing the trivia night. Do you see he's starting VPR trivia? Oh, I saw Brittany's live podcast in New York last week. And before City Winery, they had all these ads for like upcoming shows. And all of a sudden it said Tom Sandoval, December 28th, VPR trivia. So Tom Sandoval, it must have like how desperate are we for money that he's not even karaokeing. He's keeping the cost low, but like VPR trivia already with Tom. Like, do you want to spend December 28th with Tom? Like, I feel like we're still not at a place where we can do trivia with him.
No. But you know what? There are fans that were still going to see his show and thrilled and posting excitedly about it when we were in deep rage with him. And, he's a little bit more innocuous now. Now he's just like this annoying guy. But
see, that's like, it's almost like that magic of well, not that there was a magic to Scandival, but like when that wears off, you all of a sudden kind of go, oh, it's just a dude doing karaoke. Like, that's the thing that I would be so curious about his mental state. And I truly hope he's actually getting real therapy and not just, scream therapy or cold plunges.
Yes, 100%. I mean, the other thing that's really sad is in real life, he put so much money that didn't belong to him into this bar or whatever it was, restaurant, bar, and it's just over? Like, what happens? What happens to all of that? Does he not have enormous debt to repay?
Well, and I will say this: he takes care of all his like he overpays his band. He overpays. So I mean, that's the one thing I'll always give credit to Sandoval. Like he's very generous with everybody. And I don't know where that, obviously that's a great quality to have, but like right now, he's probably, I mean, he's going to be on the new season of The Traitors, so we're going to see him there. Schwartz, Lala, and Sheen are over on The Valley season 2.
Which I'm so annoyed about, by the way. I don't want to see Lala and Sheena on The Valley. I don't.
Well, I think they needed Schwartz because I think at a certain point nobody wanted to do scenes with Jax, so they need Schwartz almost. Is that and poor like Schwartz is always like the toxic guy whisperer. Like, I'll still hang out with him. I did it last season for Sandoval. I'll do it for Jax. All right.
Yes.
Like that dude, that's his like greatest hit.
Absolutely. But everybody needs like the straight man to, the comedy guy. And he's kind of like, the toxic man's straight guy.
Everybody likes him.
Yeah, and he's harmless. I don't think he detracts from things in a production way. Whereas I feel like what Lala did with VPR last season, I'm really worried she's come straight off the back of that into filming The Valley, and she's got that mode of operating that I'm really worried is going to infect the waters on The Valley, where I thought they had such a great thing going on. There was plenty of toxicity. There was plenty of drama. There was plenty of all of that stuff. We don't need manufactured drama, which is what she brings.
Well, I mean, listen, we were already wrong about The Valley to begin with, saying everybody said they would hate it. So I'm going to pray and hope that The Valley season 2, they know what they're doing. But I will say producer Jeremiah from Vanderpump Rules moved over to The Valley for season 2. So I don't know what that means for that show. And then we have Stassi on Vanderpump Villa season 2, which premieres sometime in I think February of 2025. So Stassi, I mean, like, so these people will still be on our television screens everywhere, but it just won't be as this group, which would have been so unrealistic. I just feel like, I think just we wanted that wrap up, or just that. I mean, maybe it'll be 10 years from now when they sit down and look at the experience, like the Friends.
Do a reunion in 5 years time. Like, where are they now? Do a little, short limited series. We can follow them around and just see what they're up to. I'd be interested in that, but not if I'm hearing from them every single day on everybody's podcast and endless Amazon Lives.
Oh, I wish they'd ban Amazon Lives from Bravo. I wish they'd ban podcasts from. I wish they would just, because that's the thing, is that there's too much to keep up with, and then you're always missing a piece of information because I'm like, well, I didn't get a chance to listen to 30 other cast members' podcasts. Like I thought, like, just let them be a part of the cast. Why do they have to have a podcast as well? This is just me as a podcaster. You're a podcaster too. It's just too much.
It's too much. It's way too much. And it's too much behind the curtain. Like, we want to watch the shows. And I know it's like that dichotomy that we're talking about, where we want to kind of understand it all and be behind the scenes, but we also want to be able to enjoy the shows and not have it unpacked and have history rewritten every time they're behind a mic.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Yeah, I always wish there was, like, I don't watch a lot of sports, but when I do, I love referees. I mean, I do, because I feel like there needs to be somebody like saying, like, that's allowable, that's not allowable. And you're that's a penalty. We're fining you $500. Heather Gay, if you say receipts proof timeline one more time, that's $500. We're going to charge you every time. Like, those are the things that I kind of rant and rave about, and it just becomes, I don't know. I like controlled situations, and they're already capturing something that is hard to control. So then when you put podcasting and Amazon Lives and BravoCon on top of it, it becomes like unmanageable to me. What has Bravo taught you about life?
What has Bravo taught me about life? That is such a good question. I mean, so many things. There are so many versions of Bravo. I mean, Southern Charm is one thing. The Valley is one thing. The Housewives are all something else. I think what it has taught me, though, is that I absolutely would not want to go on one of those shows. I just,
that's a pretty good lesson. I think we're all.
I think.
And by the way, for anybody that you listening that say you want to go on one of these shows, go run to a therapist immediately. Like, you need to get checked out.
Me.
Like, nobody should want to be on these shows. Yeah, read Plot Twist. There should be an updated copy of her book with a whole chapter of what to do if you want to get on a Bravo show and how not to do it.
100%. Yeah. I think it's really, it's dangerous, and you're inviting a whole lot of negativity and terrible things into your life. And I think you have to be a certain personality, and you need to be a Lisa Barlow, who is just so in her little bubble and loving
I don't think she's
it.
aware. Wouldn't you love to be that? I don't want to be like that oblivious to certain things.
Yes.
Or to have such a deep belief in yourself.
Yes. I would love that. I would absolutely. I mean, she just seems so unaffected, even when she's affected by what's going on. It's still she's distressed, because it's like you're knocking on the edges of her bubble, but she's not actually in the real world, I don't feel.
No, I truly think the aliens are coming, and she might already be. Her and Brittany Bateman might be aliens already. So I think
yes, Brittany. Oh, what an addition! Wow.
I love her. I love her nearly as much as I love Bronwyn, but just in very different ways.
Totally.
Very different ways.
Yeah. Brilliant. The casting on that show is so good. They are all so quirky, unusual, largely, I think, authentic to who they are, and not afraid to kind of just bring it. And it's outlandish. I just love it.
No, it really is. I miss it after I finish watching it, and I look forward. It's on tomorrow night, and I can't wait. I'm like, oh, Beverly Hills is on tonight. I want Salt Lake on tonight. To talk about your book for a second, Plot Twist. It mentions how you lost your mom, I think, at 21, right? And obviously, I lost my mom about a year and a half ago, or a year and a couple months, and what a big life change that has been. And I was thinking about Mary Cosby recently with Robert Jr. going through addiction, and Robert Jr. telling Mary, frankly, his mom, saying, hey, it's just life. Just felt like plain chicken, it felt like unseasoned chicken, and drugs gave it seasoning. And I was thinking about that, and I think the book probably talks a little bit about this, of with my mom not here anymore, it has a little bit of that vibe of it's just the flavor is not, the seasoning has disappeared in some ways. Did you feel that way? Do you talk about this kind of stuff in the book?
Yeah, look, for me, my mum died really suddenly. There was no warning. She just was unconscious, So
there was nothing for you to prep for.
Nothing. I was a happy-go-lucky 21-year-old. I was partying with my friends. I was just living the life. And I got a call from my dad at 7:00 in the morning saying, your mum's become unconscious overnight. She's in emergency, let's go. And she was she'd had a pulmonary embolism, which is like a clot in the lung. And that could have come from travel. It could have been any number of things. No one really knows. But she was unconscious for 3 days and on life support for 3 days. So we had 3 days to kind of try to get our heads around what all of this meant. And it's the weirdest thing, and you probably would have had this a bit too towards the end, Ryan, but seeing your parent in that state where their body is there, but they're not there.
Oh,
and it's
God,
it's just, it is so brutal. And it's not something you ever get over. Grief is not ever something you get over. You just, integrate it into your life, and you learn to live with it. So for me, I think it took a good 10 years to really get to a place where I wasn't devastated by it. I mean, I was fully functioning. I was still living all of the life.
Yeah.
And, I went and got my degrees, and I was still a good friend and a daughter and all of those things. But there's this enormous hole inside of you that just never goes away. And you're aware of it, and you're conscious of it the whole time. And then after 10 years, not to make it depressing for you, for some people that comes a lot quicker. And, maybe it's because it was so sudden for me and I was so young.
Yeah.
But after 10 years, it sort of became not something that I felt I needed to cry about as frequently. And the sadness and the longing was there. And of course, it's evolved. I've got 3 young boys now, and that's a whole different layer of grief where I'm seeing this life that she's not a part of. And,
Yeah,
that
you've
adds.
created this beautiful life filled with like
Yeah,
hope and dream and adversity and all this. And yeah, that's it exactly. Of like, God, I wish she could see that. And everybody's like,
yeah,
oh, she can see it. Like, I don't
yeah,
know, I don't know, but like, I wish
yeah,
she could see it here. Like, I wish she could see
yeah,
it. And that's that thing. But you're
yeah,
right. Like, it's so wild when you see your parent incapacitated
mm,
and all of a sudden you're replaying decades worth of memories of all the
yeah,
moments that she was alive that you didn't fully appreciate of her
yeah,
active, like, there was that last week was just insane. Like, me and my dad were talking about it this weekend of, just the horror of, she had hospice, but they were on call. Like, we would just call them in and
mm,
having to like deadlift your mom to get her to be able to
mm,
like go to the bathroom and her not being able to communicate, like to watch somebody's communication skills leave them
yeah,
entirely. That is something, I mean, people talk about scary movies. That's the scariest thing I've ever, like, that truly, like, I didn't know how much I believed in PTSD. I did it in terms of war and stuff, but that's
mm,
the stuff that still will just, I'll have a moment, like, even if it's a good moment, and then all of a sudden I'll flash back to,
yeah,
deadlifting my naked mom and just be like, oh
yeah,
God. And it was wild. It
absolutely.
was nothing I've
Yeah.
ever experienced before.
No, and it's not something we should have to go through. Like, what would be amazing is we all live really long lives, and then our lovely parents are 100 years old and just pass away peacefully in their sleep. But,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that doesn't happen for so many of us, and that is something you do have to kind of carry with you, and that's while you're here having the best time talking about reality TV, and it's all light and fun and entertaining, your mum and all of those memories are right under the surface. And, you know, that takes a lot of time to feel okay about. And for the emotion attached to those memories to feel less reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you then, you've written two books now. The first one's called Embracing Change. And then plot twist, how do you get to a point where you feel you can write about these things or that you have a handle on your own experience to be able to help others with theirs?
Well, I think the thing is, I absolutely do not have a handle on my own my own issues. I'm riddled with anxiety. I'm great at helping other people with theirs, but I
Yeah.
can't turn it around and do it on myself. So I am absolutely by no means any kind of magical creature that just has it all figured
Soothsayer.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely not. But I've been a therapist for 18 years and I have lived through so many plot twists. So I had my mum die at 21, then every single person in the top generation of my family was just dying. I was going to more funerals than any of my friends had been to altogether. My boyfriend at the time, I came home one day, we were living together, we had a dog, a future, and he was listing all his favorite things on eBay. And I was like, hey, like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I just think I'm going to go overseas. And I'm thinking, oh, cool. Like, all right, where are we
Yeah, let's do
going?
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, just me, just me. So I had my mum die, all of these relatives die. Then my boyfriend, a couple of years later, is just like vanished out of my life. So it was just like hit after hit after hit after hit. And I think that experience of having to just kind of get up and go and continue with life on one foot in front of the other pushed me into a career where I was helping people at the coroner's court, which is nothing but sudden and unexpected death. So everybody there has had someone they love or witnessed somebody dying suddenly and unexpectedly, usually in a traumatic way. And I felt like I had a lot to offer because I also had all this lived experience. And yeah, I had the degrees, but they're not worth that much. I feel like I related much better on a personal level. And I think that's what grief and life experience can do. It opens you up to a whole world of people who have had the same experience. And
Yeah.
while grief feels so incredibly isolating and it's only happening to you and your whole world has been torn apart, there's not one person on this planet that goes through life without experiencing grief. It is
Yeah, no.
absolutely
My
a
dad always said,
universal.
"Listen, we're not special in this. This isn't
Yeah,
unique to us." I mean, she was unique to us, but this experience is not unique to us, and that's something that I always remind myself of, and I do think a lot of people do forget that, because it does feel just so overwhelming that how
yeah,
could anybody else And then you realize, God, we're walking around looking at all these other people that have been through their own horror stories. And if you haven't had a horror story yet, you're going to have a horror story at some point.
Exactly. And so that's a little bit kind of heartwarming to know that these horrors in our lives, not only are they shared experiences with so many other people, but even the worst tragedies can turn into opportunities for growth. And not to get all like Tony Robbins here, but genuinely, genuinely, the worst and most difficult times of our lives will one day become the greatest teacher, and we'll be able to look back and go, it's because of that terrible experience that I am where I am today. And it might take a whole lot of downs and lows and terrible sleepless nights and all of that. But at some point we all turn around and go, actually, if like in my case, if she hadn't died, I don't know if I would have gone into psychology so quickly. I was a performer. I was like you, Ryan. I was in musical theater. I was the star of the show.
Oh, so you were super dope. You were super awesome. Yeah, that means
absolutely.
Yeah, musical theater kid. Yeah.
But I had a completely different world going on, and it pushed me in that direction. And eventually, to the podcast and to the books and to all of the things that have led me to this conversation with you. And
it's all led up to this, by the way. It's all led up to right now. Everything is leading up to this. And and you're going to get off. You're going like, that's God. Now what? Now what?
I can hang up the
rewrite
boots.
Everything. Yeah.
That's it. It'll be a whole new career change for me now. But truly, this is such a treat for me. Like, no joke.
This is so great. I mean, this is such an easygoing conversation, which is the ones that I love the most. Sometimes I was telling people like the big Bravo like stars and all that. Those are like sometimes the least fun to do because there's only so much you're going to get unless you're like a big, like, big, like the biggest show out there, then they'll be able to open up more. But these are like the real things when you get to actually get to know somebody a little bit or get to hear their opinions about how wacky Salt Lake is, which by the way, what do you think about Kyle Richards on Beverly Hills this season? Like, it seems like, and where are you with Dorit and Dorit's truth?
Oh my God, I'm living for Dorit this season. She's always been like...
Wait, going into this season, did you think you were going to be living for Dorit? Because I didn't think I was going to be living for Dorit.
I've never been living for Dorit. I've always thought she was a bit of a try-hard. Is that a word in
It is America? A word, yes. I don't know if it's an official one, but I use it.
Yeah, like a try-hard, and I was like, oh, whatever. And I look at her before pictures and I totally can see who that girl was, So that was like why I've always found her a little bit whatever on the show. And Kyle, like I've sort of been okay with Kyle over the years. My eyes are open to Kyle, but I'm actually
mean? Well, do you think Kyle's an opportunist? Do you think she's a puppet master? I mean,
I think she's much more of a puppet master than she'll ever admit. I think she's a savvy TV producer, and
at this point, I think you have to be on that show that long, right?
Yeah, and so I think she knows. I think she shares. Like the political answers about Morgan Wade over the last 18 months or whatever have driven me crazy. But it feels like it's all been, and look, maybe she has been grappling with some questions about her sexual identity, and we are not entitled to her every thought about that. And that's fair enough. I'm not arguing for that. But I just feel like she's been breadcrumbing and, using this relationship for intrigue and attention, and it worked for her. And now maybe Morgan's like, you know what, I ain't into this anymore.
I'm not into this, pal. You're using me. Yeah,
I'm a real artist. And so she's like done. So now we don't talk about the Morgan letters.
Which by the Morgan letters, which by the way, I would be totally cool with that if I didn't just see that paparazzi photo of them still hanging out with Lisa Rinna. And now I feel like you better effing talk about Morgan Wade again. If she's still in your life, you bet, and Dorit better make you talk about it this season.
Yeah. So I actually feel like Kyle is getting what she deserved. All of her ridiculous reasons for being angry with Dorit. And you know what? The producers are on the viewers' side at the moment. Like they are backing up everything Dorit has to say with flashbacks, like corroborating all of her stories. How many times did we replay that BravoCon moment? Which, by the way,
way too much. We played the BravoCon moment way too much.
But it is such an obvious moment where she's thrown the drink on Dorit, and Dorit has reacted by saying something funny, mean, like, well, you're not my favorite anymore. How could you possibly turn that into a reason to be angry and hurt by someone? That was outrageous.
Yeah, it really, really well. I'm
Yeah.
curious because I think Kyle thought that last season was going to be your toughest. And it
Yeah.
looks like this season might be just as tough, if not more, because now it seems like she's a little jealous about Mauricio going on about his life.
Yes.
And he seems very comfortable going on about his life. I don't necessarily think the Dorit and PK thing is fake, like somebody was speculating this week. I think there's always been issues with them over the last couple of years. It's just that now is the first time Dorit's been honest about it.
Yes, I would agree from my naive perspective as a viewer. But that whole scene on the couch with Mauricio, I actually found quite painful to watch. I think it felt like somebody who she was still in her feelings. I feel, and again, I'm putting words and feelings into Kyle's mouth here, but it's like she pushed him away. She waved Morgan in his face. She was an independent woman. She was, maybe, as she said, she didn't feel supported by him after her friend died, and there was resentment and all of that stuff. And now she's out of it, and he's literally flown the nest. And it feels like big waves of regret. And when there's this realization that he's bought his own linen for the new bed that she's not sleeping in, and he has his own towels, and she's not privy to any of those personal little touches in his life anymore, it felt actually like I could feel her pain. It was really very
interesting because you could see that's where she got her reward system with Mauricio in the past of buying the things for them and taking care of those things. So now she's at a loss for that. And my speculation was, whatever happened with Mo and her, but then Morgan became a part of it. And that transference of like, well, that she makes me giggly and she makes me happy. And I haven't felt like this since I was a little like in high school. And then perhaps I was speculating that Morgan put the kibosh on that and slowed it down. And then Kyle really had to face the actuality of ending or being part of ending this very long, successful marriage for the most part. And then you're starting to grieve the loss of that marriage because you're so hopped up in the excitement of the other thing. And then you're like, whoa, oh my God, I didn't realize we really did this, didn't we?
Yeah. And then meanwhile, it feels like the ship has sailed and he is thriving in his new life.
Did you see that rumor that Dorit was caught coming out of his new there's no way. There's just no way.
I mean, maybe is that part of the reason that really Kyle is so resentful of Dorit? Maybe she is wondering.
If that was the reason, I feel like Kyle, once Dorit tried to even say anything to her, Kyle would have been like, "You fucked my husband, you stupid." Like, I mean, she would just, I feel like she would scream it out because I don't think the Bravo fans would forgive. I mean, we would celebrate Dorit, but we would never forgive her. We would never forgive her, but we would celebrate her. That's how.
But maybe there's not enough. Maybe it was like those little, they had a flirty relationship, or they seemed to have a connection, but it never crossed the line. Or
he has a flirty relationship with everybody, it seems, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I can't see why else she would be so, unless it was the Kathy thing at the reunion. I mean, or reading the text message, but none of it is big enough to, and maybe it's displaced anger and she really, or misplaced anger, and she actually is really upset about Mo and she's just taking it out on Dorit because she's there and it's easy. She's always been kind of an easier target. And Dorit is like, hell no.
No. Yeah, no, it's the primary relationship that I'm watching is the Dorit Kyle one this season. And I'm curious to see where it goes. Erica Jane, really taking a back seat at this point in a really interesting way compared to the seasons that we were both so angry with her and her behavior. And I almost feel like production was like, if you give us 2 seasons of like you really coming off horrible, we'll let you take a back seat a little bit and we won't ask you to apologize to the victims anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so much there with Erica. She is really just a shadow of herself. I don't know. It feels really strange.
Because she admitted last week she still loves money. She loves other people's possessions. She got a Porsche, she got $150,000 Porsche. So is she that different, or is she just quiet? I mean, you know, like, I mean, she doesn't seem to be. Yeah, she rented it. Yeah. And by the way, Brandy, this is a prime example. Look at Erica. Erica doesn't drink nearly as much as she used to.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, maybe it was the combination of all the things that she was doing and taking at the time when she was a little bit out of control. But, you know, there are still big legal things on the horizon for her, and it's not over. And maybe she has had to kind of come down a peg or two. And maybe her lawyers have said, listen, we have got thousands of hours of footage that don't look good for you in any kind of lawsuit around material possession and so on.
We have so much film on you. We have literally so much film.
So let's not get ourselves into any other situation where you could, you know, any of this could be used in court against you. Just like calm down and just be in the background and don't give them anything.
Yeah. Do you have about 10 more minutes? I know I've blown past the hour.
I got all the time you need, Ryan.
I was planning just this be an hour, but I'm really liking this. Not that I didn't think I was going to like, you know what I'm saying. Anyways.
I know.
So we got Roni, right? And Roni, you said you kind of like, I dabble with Roni. Like I watch it at a certain point. Why, in your opinion, as a Bravo lifelong fan, what do you think is not, I don't want to say wrong, but what do you think is not working on Roni? Why do you think it's not capturing people's imaginations?
Look, visually, it's a feast. The city looks great. The trips look great. The clothing looks great. The people look great. But there's just really substance missing. I mean, we know the relationships aren't real or not long-standing anyway, and they are having these ridiculous arguments about who's closer to who. I can't keep up with what team anyone is on. Everyone's against Brynn, and then we're against Erin, and then we're against, you know, it's just all of this stuff. And the Rebecca Minkoff rumor, I mean, like I can understand on a tiny level that they're trying to find out who leaks information. But then on the same time, they're saying, well, we know Brynn embellishes and leaks information. So you already knew that. It was like,
yeah, you're right. Well, we know who talks shit. Like watch your own show. Like, I mean, literally, you guys should know this already if you knew each other.
Yeah. And like Brynn, I think, you know, obviously brave, talking about the sexual assault, but it's even hard for me to find the energy and the empathy for that story. And I'm sorry if that's like a really harsh thing to say, but because of all of the weeks before of her so hypersexualized about everything to become a caricature of herself, and then the self-producing and the conversations telling people how to behave and don't say that and speak like that, and you're coming off like this, and like,
see, that's what we were talking about this on the Patreon last night, is that Brynn, you know, we were talking about in terms of like Brynn and Jeff Lewis, like how they have this little spat going on, and Brynn is like, oh, he's a pig and stuff, and like he talks about women. I'm like, Brynn, you do all of these things that you accuse Jeff of doing, and you also but like the rules don't seem to count when it's about when Brynn does it. But for everybody else, Brynn seems to judge very deeply. Now, normally that would make an excellent housewife, somebody that judges very deeply, but you don't have these other people that are working. And I don't mean at that same level in terms of talent. I just at the same energy level. So it just feels like really messy. It feels like she's on the old Roni instead of the new Roni, and nobody's there to like fully be able to encapsulate how the audience feels. Like Uba can sort of like, oh, Brynn, this and that, but it becomes really muddled. It just becomes not very clear and laser-like.
Yeah, and then you're right. Muddled is the word, because I think I've got a handle on who hates who and who's angry with who and who's hurt by who. And then all of a sudden, you know, Uber's losing it with Erin, and then Erin's talking about Uber's coming for me, and then Uber's losing it, saying, I thought Erin and I were great. But I'm like, hang on, were you though? Because 2 episodes ago, it was all about your problems with Erin. I just can't keep up. And it honestly, I will keep watching, of course, but it makes me so nostalgic for the OGs. You know, that ultimate girls trip they did with that crazy crew. Yeah. That was honestly the most nourishing show for me.
But nobody watched it really. Nobody really showed up for that show on Peacock, and then they put it on Bravo months and months later. But that's what I like. I feel a little bit like old Roni, like Vanderpump. Like, be thankful that it happened. It happened. You can watch it anytime. You're not going to be able to recreate it. All of those ladies, also the great thing about that is that they weren't all superstar or Bravo superstars yet. So it was very unaffected. The social media landscape was completely different. So you got to see real, like Jill Zarin walking across the Brooklyn Bridge with Bethany Frankel. You're not going to be able to get scenes like that anymore. And the new Roni, these people, you got to actually care if somebody dislikes you. And there's only a certain people on this, that seem like they actually care. Most of them are like, I don't care. Sai's like, yeah, whatever. No, you need to really care. And we need to believe that you care. We need to believe that this is the end of the world if this person dislikes you or something. And I think it just goes back to casting, that they didn't cast a core group of friends that already knew each other. So they're catching up and we're catching up to them.
Yeah, and I think each of them are interesting. They're all individually.
That's what I'm saying. I don't I get why they were all cast. I think individually it works, but sometimes they just come together, and sometimes just magic doesn't necessarily happen.
Yeah. And I think they're trying to create a show, and I think they all probably were really excited by that. I think it was received quite well. Again, it was a bit like The Valley. We're all like, oh, we don't want this. And then we watched it and it was like, actually, this is all right.
Yeah. And then you don't know until you see it. That's the thing, is that you don't know until you know. And that's we'd sit here and we play Monday Morning Quarterback and we're like, oh, you do this differently, this. But once it's like, once you see something that works, it just works. Sometimes it's hard to even you're just like, oh, I like this. It's easy to watch. It's a good feeling. Oh, I can't wait to watch next week. And then sometimes that's even where us Bravo fans get it wrong, because none of this, it really is it's a crapshoot. It's lightning in a bottle. When something works, I would love to talk to more producers if they were able to actually come on with their strong NDAs. But I would love to see even they know it's well, we got to make our days. We got to get these scenes and this scenes. And sometimes I imagine them saying, sometimes you feel like there's magic and sometimes you're like, it's not working, and you just have to write it out.
Yeah. And, but I don't know what the answer to this problem is, which is the audience, the awareness of the audience and the awareness of trying to make a show and to become breakout stars on their own. I had to pause the episode where they were having the picnic in the park, because every time they cut over to Brynn, going to town on the chocolate penis, I was just like, ugh, Brynn. Someone was having a real conversation and she's like, look at me sucking this dick. I'm like,
you don't want, I mean, that's the tough thing too, because I think I would fall into that trap of oh, I need to make this interesting for camera. I need to, by the way, the interesting thing is just be you, that's a good therapy thing. You are, be you. And that's why I think we are gravitated towards Lisa Barlow's, because she's her. Even if you're that's insane, that's really horrible, she doesn't care. She's well, that's who I am, Yeah.
John Barlow.
That's good. Wait, do that again. Do more Lisa.
I don't know. I just have her, from that karaoke. John Barlow, this one's for you.
Oh my God. She's going on Jeff Lewis in the morning, and I can't wait to hear that, because I think it's her first time on, and I'm wondering what that's going to be like. So Potomac, I didn't watch this week's Potomac yet because it's been a crazy week, but I do like this season, and I hate that I don't give it more love. Because I hate that I spend my time talking about why Roni doesn't work rather than the things that I like about Potomac. But really quick, I will say Mia, I mean, putting her kids on, I was watching clips and I haven't seen the full episode yet, but I think she announced the divorce to her kids on camera. And I always get really it's I think Mia is a great housewife, but sometimes with that Gordon situation and Ink, I just think, good for us, the viewers, but man, how I always want to see 10 years from now, how that's going to cause ripples in your actual life.
Absolutely. And look at some of the housewives' kids who are now adults, and a lot of them, the ones that aren't really fame seeking, some of them still are, there are so many that would say that is the absolute worst thing you can do, and that they're sort of being exploited for their emotional reality. And I just, I don't know, would you want your hardest moments in life to be aired like that? You know, it's one thing for your parents to be making fools of themselves, and you still have to live with that at school and in your real life. But to have those moments talked about, unless it's a reenactment, you know, and that the kids are okay with that.
Reenactment of a
Yeah,
divorce,
like
like
now we're
Karen
going to talk
Huger's
about
the DUI reenactment. Yeah.
yes. But, you know, like, okay, guys, we've talked about it off camera, but now I have to film something. So I'm just going to,
Oh, gotcha.
maybe I'm just going to say these
Got it.
things.
Yeah.
And we won't go into some of the other things we talked about yesterday, but this is what I'm going to talk about.
But see, then doesn't that kind of abuse the one of the concepts of watching reality? We're
Yes.
watching a refurbished scene that already happened in real life, which, by the way, I imagine happens a lot on reality TV, but I don't want to know about it. Like, I want to believe, like, supposedly in the Valley season 2, Jax is served divorce papers in one of the final episodes. And then I heard that it had actually happened before, but they had to redo it because the cameras weren't there.
Yeah, I heard that too. And it'll be so interesting to see his reaction. Is it going to be different to the Jax Taylor reactions we've seen before? Like, are we going to know that this is all fake and that maybe he puts things on in others? I mean, like, this is me going spiraling, and I don't want to do that. I just want to believe it's all real too. You know?
So, okay. So then we have all of these shows on, and then Atlanta comes back next year.
Yes.
Southern Charm is on right now. Do you watch Southern Charm?
Yes, of course.
So I just watched the second. I got a screener because I'm talking to Leva this week, and this JT, I hate that he quit because he is reality TV show gold. And I know they all hate him legitimately and probably for legitimate reasons, but I'm sorry, man. He is what you want on he makes content.
Yeah.
Like, there's a scene in this week's episode with Craig that I was just like, this is why you want this guy. You need this guy. And he quits at the end.
Yeah.
And we already know about it.
Well, that's right. I find him to be, in real life, I think I would find him the most annoying person in the room. But exactly, he holds a mirror up and he says the things that we don't really want to hear about our quote unquote heroes of the show, you know. But yeah, I think he is needed. But there's so much about that show that, I mean, in the original days, that was the most like chaotic, incredible mess. I couldn't get enough.
You think
of
about
it.
how young Catherine was, being with an older Thomas Ravenel, and Catherine had been with a lot of those men of Southern, like it hooked up with Shep. I mean, and you look at Catherine now, and it's, you know, it's not necessarily Brandy Glanville, but it's toxic in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, this is maybe not the liked opinion here, but I actually have a soft spot for Shep and Austin. I see them.
How can you not? See, like, that's the thing. They make me laugh. Like, I just said, like, how ridiculous. I mean, like, that conversation with Shep going like, I did ayahuasca. They say it's three years of therapy in 3 days. And I'm like, you know, I'm like, well, therapy is also therapy. But I was like, God bless you. God bless you. Because, you know, as long as you felt like you had a healing experience. But it is funny how us men, we do tend to take the shortcuts. And we also tend to do like what we think rock stars would potentially do. Like, you know, because it's maybe not nearly as sexy, like sitting down with a therapist each week. But if you're in Costa Rica and you're having like vision quests, like that's a lot more badass if you're a guy.
Yeah, and it's as you say, it's the quick fix, right? Isn't it what Jesse did on the Valley, and he came back like
Jesse
ready.
did, Jax did Reiki, Sandoval did scream therapy, all of those people.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, I think the thing that was funny about Shep is that I think he was really genuine about what he felt was the transformation and the things he saw in his vision. I mean, really interesting what he saw about Taylor. I thought that was...
He literally said, I was feeding Taylor like a baby bird and she just kept bouncing her dumb bird head into a window. Like but see, that was, to me, showed like what that relationship was, is that it was like a father-like relationship where you felt like you were taking care of her. And then you just don't want it to be like, then Shep thinks of like, but who was taking care of old Shep here? Who's taking care of me? I need somebody to take care of me. Like, you know, it's to me another easy way out potentially of your own. Like, it's like, also, dude, you like cheating with other women. Like, that was another problem as well.
Yeah, but then you could also look at it as, and then she kept coming back and she kept coming back. He was like, it's never going to be the marriage and the relationship, but we should text. And she kept coming back and she rubbed Austin in his face and all of those things. And I can see where that vision would come from, because last year was really painful to watch her kind of spiraling through all of that. And I think we've all been in a relationship that's unrequited like that.
Oh yeah.
And
oh yeah.
you go crazy. You do. And the poor thing was doing it on TV. And like I have empathy for her in that regard. But there was so much last season that I thought was painful and not great. And I was really kind of hoping that this season would come back to the old vibe a little bit.
But what is the old vibe? Like, what is?
Well, it just needs to be a little bit more silliness. I don't know, intermixed with some of the heavier stuff, Yeah. And I think we lost some of those characters, like Cameron Eubanks.
I know
that,
and I mean, Ashley was wacky, but who is the hairdresser that I loved? That dated Austin.
Chelsea.
Yeah, I loved Chelsea. I love Chelsea.
Yeah, she was fantastic. And so we had these kind of strong women that weren't shoving anything down anyone's throat. They were just like, this is my boundary. This is who I am. And I'm going to hold you accountable. And not in a way that kind of ruined the show and made it heavy and dark or whatever. Like Cameron would just take Shep out for a lunch and just be like, that was not okay. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know?
No, you're right. Yeah. That's interesting.
So there's that piece is sort of missing, and Madison is great, but she's absolutely like on reality TV.
Yeah. I mean, she's a Lala type character.
Yes.
That really doesn't have, I mean, she's dealing with these Southern men, but Madison's a firecracker, and now all of a sudden she's like the key female of the show.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a shame because they did have so many strong women, even like Landon, who are like, what was that? But they had these kind of big people that were big storylines. I feel like Leva has been kind of pushed to the background. Vanita, I mean, I'm not sure what she's there for.
I really want to talk to Vanita because I'm like, she's all of a sudden going to have a relationship with JT. And I'm like, what is going on there? I never in a million years. Is that just a reality show relationship for the show or...
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a bit confusing. I either want them to give them the full storyline, let us like really get into their lives, or what's going. I've got a few kind of evolving thoughts, I think.
Well, you got to come back before the end of the season to talk about it. You guys, her book is called Plot Twist. I'm going to be reading this over the holidays as I'm with my family to try to deal with the plot twists in my own life and figure out what 2025 is going to be all about. Because I always say I'm going to like think about the next year and then I never do it, but I got to really do it this year. And somebody's got to hold me to this. Anyways, how else do we support you? Because your podcast is called The Curious Life, right? So that is your podcast. So we go subscribe, we rate it 5 stars. And what kind of, I was on there during Scandival, but you have so many different types of guests on that show. What would you primarily say it's about?
Look, originally it started off as a show about really Australian celebrities from the sports and television and media world who are sharing stories of overcoming tragedies and going into triumph. And then I've had people like Chris Franjola, who everyone would probably know. I've had him on a couple of times. And I'm sort of stepping into my reality TV. I'm owning it. I've sort of had it as my secret thing for so many years. And I do a live series with a friend of mine each week where we talk about Bravo shows and kind of do a bit of this stuff.
Oh, amazing.
It's on Instagram, which is Jana.Firestone, Jana. So, there's a bit, I'm sort of changing it up on social media at the moment and trying to be like you, stepping into all the things next year. And so come along for the ride if you're into this.
We'll put all that information in the show notes, you guys. So go support. I know you guys might not even listen to this on the same day. You might be listening to it next week or next year, but go support. I think this was just a delightful conversation. You're welcome back anytime. I love it. I mean, I really could keep going, but I gotta get to Kathy Hilton's house. So
I mean, you've got an important date to get to. Kathy trumps me. I totally get that.
Oh my God. I don't even know what it's. I can't wait to see what it's all about.
Oh
Anyways,
my God.
Jana Firestone, everybody. I'll put all her information in the show notes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me.